Hey, it's a great audience here this morning at 9 a.m. to sort of kick off a little bit of stuff about access. Sort of when I had the opportunity to put this presentation together, I thought back many years to when I was a young chipper, young lad in IT. Kind of access was the first thing I did, so I brought back many loving memories. So I guess today we're going to be talking a little bit about access services and reporting made easy. But obviously to do some reporting we need to take a little bit of a journey to actually get some data into SharePoint before we can do some reporting, because I think we probably all agree reporting's not too useful without data. So I'm going to sort of take you through kind of a couple of things about access and access services and how it really relates to SharePoint. And ideally how you can start to think of maybe access in a different way. I remember sort of a couple of different conversations about access, and I sometimes you have a love-hate relationship with access. Sort of more love for me because it enables me to do a couple of things and maybe every now and then upset a dev. But someone suggested to me that Access was probably the best virus that Microsoft had written, because it's probably one of the most successful things they've done. And when you go and look at an organisation, there's many Access databases in it. And I think that's a testament to the capabilities of the product, and maybe it's a testament to some of the people that use it and the innovative ways that they actually use the product to solve some of their business challenges. So let's kick in and see if we can learn something, and hopefully people can walk out of the room with some different ideas about Access and maybe some thoughts about how it might fit into their business to solve some of the problems that they haven't got enough time or money to solve today. Anyway, I'm Brendan Ford, CTO at Provoke Solutions. We do a chunk of SharePoint stuff and a chunk of .NET and some online services stuff. So this is Access Services is probably something that we need to start looking a bit more at and how it can help our customers. So really today I sort of want to take you through a couple of things. A little bit of an overview, just to talk about, hey, why, what, how, what craziness am I talking about? Then I'd like to talk about a couple of different things about Access Services. One is kind of using kind of SharePoint as a way of supporting Access in your organisation, and then the other one, the second part, is really talking about Access Services full-blown and what we can expect to see there and how they'll look. Really 200 level session today, so kind of what I want to do is wet your juices so that you go out and go home, fire up that demo lab at home on your nights and weekends and just really crank into the Access fun and show your wife, kids. I was actually talking to Ian Morris just before the session, and he's been explaining to me how he's been getting his young lad into SharePoint. I'd imagine Access Services will be featuring there, and then obviously we'll kick in with something called The End. So just a little reminder that if you want to win prizes, one big thing about TechEd is about winning prizes and walking away with more than what you came with, both in knowledge and in product. So if you're a Twitter person, then this is the way to get involved. I've got one of these ArcMice, they're brilliant. Didn't win it, had to pay for it. Hey, okay, so let's kick into sort of the meat and potatoes of the presentation. So I guess my question is, have you ever heard when people start talking about accesses, I had this Access database and I had all this important stuff on it. My hard drive's died and now I haven't got it. Has that ever happened? Or, hey, this Access thing's corrupt and I can't get my stuff back. I have a critical access app built on it. A few years back, worked with a bank, and they had a bunch of mission critical systems running on both Access and Excel, and they got audited. Oddly enough, that didn't go so well for them because there was one dude that knew how those worked, and when he went on leave, everybody just hoped that everything kept on running. Another good one is an Access database with a whole bunch of confidential customer data in it. It's pretty easy to connect Access to something and pull some stuff down into it, and then you've got your own personal copy with it, all the freedom in the world. That's both a positive and a constructive. I was talking to another gentleman, and he's talking about another bank, and they've got several thousand Access databases lying around that they know of, and that's the big thing. And I think in many organisations you could have you could hunt for Access databases, and probably every day or every week find another one and be impressed, upset, amazed, or shocked at what they're doing and the brilliance of them. So there's a huge amount of Access floating around. So I think that's why it's kind of important about what we're talking about today. But then sort of why are some of these Access databases actually floating around? I think it's got a lot to do with IT are pretty busy. I think we'd probably all agree with that. Resources and money can be stretched at times. And so people kind of enable themselves. And they build their own Access databases for small problems that really don't justify a big project. And there's a lot of smart people out there that are really capable of taking their ideas and turning them into an application. I guess they may not sort of be classified as sort of IT supported applications, but at some stage they often do end up in the realms of IT. And I think with Access, probably one of the blessings is that it is real quick to get stuff done. You can get the basics knocked out really quickly, and you can get something up and going really quickly. The easy parts of Access take a modicum of skill. You don't need to have done a whole bunch of C#, a whole bunch of VB. You can get stuff up and going pretty quickly, and really today I'm kind of focusing on using wizards and bits and bobs rather than spending a whole bunch of time sort of banging out VB or VBA or anything like that. So I think there's a bunch of reasons why Access apps actually get built in the first place. I think as a group of people we need to sort of acknowledge those reasons and ideally in some form or fashion embrace them, because we don't want to stop people from doing good work or creating good things. We want to enable them. And so I guess the question is, why would you do Access services? Why would you get involved? And what probably a lot of people think about Access as more of a troublemaker, the troublemaker in the school ground. And why would you get involved? Well, I think, so with Access services and with SharePoint, it's giving us a different opportunity to look at it. And it means that we can start, as sort of the IT team or people providing services to the business, we can start enabling people that have got access. And we can start bringing it into a managed environment. We can start putting security policy and access on it that we believe is applicable to the data that's sitting in there. We can make sure that it's actually getting backed up, a novel concept and all. So we can bring some of the rigor around these access databases that they probably they're sort of rightly due, and especially if they've got customer data in it, and especially if they've got customer data that you don't necessarily want sitting on a laptop, left on a train, that some bloke comes and finds. And I'm sure most people that find laptops are pretty honest, and they'll give it back to you, and they won't look at anything, and they certainly won't share it with the media or the public. So, and I think Access Services, sort of from really what I've been looking at, it's a great departmental level tool. Like, so it enables departments to deliver quick applications to their team for mini projects. And I'd suggest it's probably also allows you to build disposable applications. I think many times we build an application and we put so much love, heart and soul in it that we never want to see it thrown away. And some days we live with applications a little too long. Some days we sort of push them through a little too far. I think with Access we can build some departmental tool level applications. And when we look at them and say, hey, this is looking like a big boy application, then actually IT and a BA have got something they can look at and say, well, these three things will work, and you're capturing some great data here, this is some good concepts here, and they can move it into an application and mature it inside the organisation. So the first thing that I'm going to sort of really talk about, and we'll go into plan. Had some interesting times with the demo machine already this morning. Is I'm really going to talk about SharePoint hosting access. And basically what I mean by that is taking a traditional Access database and moving it up to SharePoint, storing all the data in SharePoint, and starting to leverage some of the benefits of SharePoint. And so we're going to have a quick step through that. I think historically, if you're an Access person, you'd really one or two things. If you wanted to sort of split out your Access database, you'd split the back end out and drop it into SQL, or you'd split the back end out and drop it into an Access database, and then you'd link through it. So really we're going to talk through that same sort of concept, but we're talking about Access being the store. And we're going to have a look at why that would be a sensible thing to do, and hopefully sort of through looking at it, you can start to see some of the benefits that SharePoint delivers to Access. So with that, demo. tech had been going well for everybody? Everybody enjoying the first day? I thought I didn't make it the first day. I was over in Melbourne having a day off, but my wife really loved it. How I was sitting down watching the Twitter feeds coming through and checking out the photos. She really loved the attention I was giving to her, and especially when I was showing her photos of TechEd, she was like, "Yeah, that's good, Brendan. Thank you." Cool. Hey, so she's very supportive. Hey, so what I've got here is so I've just got that. Is everybody aware that you can download the image from Microsoft SharePoint 2010? And it's up on the Microsoft site. So that's a whole bunch of files. So basically, I've just got that image running here. Would be the place that you'd want to go to sort of start playing with Access, so that you don't have to mess around building up a whole image. And what I've actually done is, and the guy that runs our IT team at Provoke, infrastructure team's not here, so this is pretty good. What I actually did is I opened up Access and I connected to a database, SQL database called Asset Register that we've got, and I just imported everything locally into Access. Then I just went away and I didn't tell them anything about it. And so I've basically got this, and my goal is to sort of use this as my demo, and my goal is to sort of push this up into SharePoint and in some respects demonstrate what people do in your organisation today anyway. They take data and make it their own. So I've got a very stock standard sort of Access database here. I've made some very sort of bad forms. I think we can all see that I am not a designer. So I've got some very basic forms. What I have done in these forms here is I've got a little bit of VBA behind some bits and bobs. And I've got a very bad report. So please don't let my design ability get in the way of what Access can do, because this stuff literally is just out of the box wizard stuff, and you've got all the freedom in the world to start to bring things together and make things look really attractive. So basically, what we want to do once we've got our thing here is really just click on the old database tools, and it's pretty simple. It's at the end of the day, it's just about shipping it up SharePoint. So just before I do that, let's go make a fresh little site. It's pretty bad when the present has to turn its own phone off, eh? Talking and typing, it's just something that blokes struggle with. So I'm just creating a blank site. Absolutely nothing special about that whatsoever. And if we just, so really there is literally nothing in this site. And that's the wrong button. Come on. So basically what Access is doing here is I've got all these tables sitting in locally here, and it's just grabbing them and pushing them up to SharePoint in an orderly fashion, and sort of going through and doing a bit of working through this presentation, a bit of research. They're sort of talking about you really being able to drop up to 50,000 rows into one list, and so that's actually a reasonable amount of data. For messing around with Access, and I think that's sort of why Microsoft is sort of talking about this being a great little departmental level sort of tool at the moment, being that you probably wouldn't have too many 50,000 plus row tables inside a departmental level application, and I guess this is probably one of the most enjoyable messages that I've seen in recent. I guess if you do have more than 50,000 rows, maybe we might be biting off something bigger than what we should chew. And so basically what's happened there is Access has shipped them all up, and as we can see from this screen here, that we've sort of got a different looking table. All the data's gone up there. The really cool thing about what we're actually seeing with all the tools and SharePoint with Access is that it's really good at giving us pretty constructive feedback about what's gone wrong and what's not. and this is basically just telling us that auto numbers are not so good in here, and primary keys. Now, if we just shoot into the Access side of things, the SharePoint side of things, we can see that all those lists are moved up into SharePoint, and we can click on a list item. It's going to bring back all the data, and we can start to interact with that list as we would with sort of any old other sort of SharePoint list, and mess with stuff and change stuff and reorder stuff and edit stuff. So that's all pretty cool, and I guess that's sort of half the dream. So now we've got all our Access data sitting up in SharePoint, which is really cool. If you don't have access to the site or to this list, and you grab that front-end database and you connect to it, you're not going to see any data. So that concept of having all the customer data, IT can then go set forth and manage permissions and make sure only the right people have it. And we'll also be able to see through auditing and logging really who's come and going. So, once again, all the benefits that you get of SharePoint are now overlaid over the sort of the benefits that you're getting with Access. So win-win. I guess the other thing that I sort of that I liked about this is document library. If I just sort of set forth and create a really basic document library. Now I've got so what I basically want to do here is, in effect, just upload that Access database to SharePoint. So in effect now I've got an Access database that's attached to some SharePoint lists. So I've actually got the front-end client sitting inside SharePoint. So anybody logging onto my intranet or my company portal can really come in here and grab the client and start working. But it still is a client-server relationship. The Access side of things is not sitting inside SharePoint as such. And just because I clicked edit, it's asking me to sort of save it somewhere. But if I clicked read only, then that'd be different. Cool. One of the other things that when you push it up to SharePoint, Access kindly makes a backup of it for you, so that you can go back and repeat your steps. One of the things that so when it actually goes through and pushes up to Access, it goes through and does a whole bunch of checks. And so if you've created lookups inside Access, so one table is relating to another table, because obviously in SharePoint now you can kind of have referential integrity in lists as such. If you've got that relationship enforced, Access will actually stop you from looking through the tables, and it'll say, hey, you've got a whole bunch of orphan data, so you need to go through and collect that. So it actually sort of does a bit of a health check on what you're actually shipping up, which is quite cool. And also it means that now that we've got that up there, people could go and administer data in a list, and people could use a richer client. And so when we think about building up reports inside Access, now we can basically create rich reports over list data. So this is why I think that sort of Access is, this first part is taking the first step in that reporting sort of reporting process. So I can basically ship all my data up to SharePoint, and then I can, let's say I've got a team that just really want to do a whole bunch of reporting and analysis on that data, and the rest of the business maybe just need to contribute a little bit of data to it. Then the rest of the business can come in and potentially contribute data, and the people that are building up the reports can build up the reports in Access. And if people that are familiar with the Access report builder, it's still as good as it ever was. It's a great little tool for actually getting reports up and going. Let's be fair, a man with graphical challenges like myself can at least get data out, and we can finish. So that's because I haven't got a bunch of images sitting in there. But so in effect, now you can sort of start actually getting sort of reporting out of that data. And I guess also if you think about the fact that you could also, I grabbed a different one, you could also link to other lists inside SharePoint and also build reports over other SharePoint lists as well, over SharePoint lists. So I think that's a sort of a pretty cool way that we can start to sort of get some more use out of Access, take it away from that SQL Server or Access relationship, move it into a controlled environment. At the end of the day, you need contributor rights to sort of set up and get those lists going, so it's all very manageable, and IT can provision a site for a departmental sort of team to go through and start building out their applications. So I guess what have we seen there? We've basically seen that we've got an Access client. An Access client is really just using SharePoint lists as a data store, and it's using potentially a document library to store that client, so that you can also control access to that client and who actually can get hold of it. So I think that's a pretty nifty way to sort of do things. And at the end, if I get time, I'll come back and show you what it would look like just to ship that straight up to SharePoint Online. So just before this prezo, I was sort of playing with some bits and bobs. And you can do exactly the same thing with SharePoint Online. So sort of what I've demoed to you today will work with SharePoint 2007, SharePoint 2010. And I think it'll also work with SPF. Haven't tried that, wasn't in my image. When you actually go through and you open up a database that's connected, it'll give you a bit of a warning to say it's connected to an app as well. So I guess let's move on to Access services. So for me, when SharePoint 2010 came out, I kind of looked at the product and I looked at the design tools that we had historically. So we had SharePoint Designer, we had InfoPath, we obviously have Visual Studio. And so now when I look at SharePoint 2010, we've got some new designer tools. So we've still got SharePoint Designer, we've still got InfoPath, we've got Visio services now and what we're doing with that. We've got Access and what we're doing with that. And I guess your challenge is to decide where and when and what you want to use to do your designing with. But I would suggest, and I suspect I'm right, that there's probably more Access development or design skills than what there are Visio design skills. I'll suggest that there's more Access design skills than what there are SharePoint Designer skills. So Access might be a pretty good home for people to start building up applications and leveraging some of their historic skills. So I guess things that we need to understand about what SharePoint actually does when we take an Access services database and ship it up. So basically it takes everything that you've got and it turns stuff into ASPX pages, lists, workflows and JavaScript. I guess one of the things that I was a little disappointed about, but it makes perfect sense, is that Access services doesn't support VBA, and there's many people inside my business that they love to periodically mock me when I sort of pull out some VBA examples. And but for me, it was a great way to get things done really quickly. And certainly when we maybe had to scrub some data or something like that, it was a perfect little tool to make things happen. Or when we needed to just sort of fire up a basic app and demo some things, and whenever a customer comes along and says, "I've got this Access database, can you help us out with it?" Everybody sort of cautiously jokes that maybe I could go down and see the customer. So no VBA today. But what we do have is macros, and what I was really surprised to see is what's actually happened to macros in SharePoint 2010, and what you can really start to do with them. And we really have two sorts of macros. One's are data macros, and the other ones are sort of I guess kind of workflow macros or form macros. And when we think about the data macros, I guess the best way to think about data macros would be to think of them as triggers. So they sit at a table level and you can fire them off. And the other thing that we can do with Access services is that we can create solutions and we can create a site template. And we'll have a quick look at some of the things that some of the site templates that ship with SharePoint 2010. very structured site approach here. As you can see, I've had a number of plays at this. So once again, we've got exactly the same database. What you basically get with Access Services, so you can go on and click publish to SharePoint, and there's a compatibility checker that you have to run, the compatibility checker. And I think this is we can see that we've got a number of challenges in this upgrade. And one of the cool things that you get as part of this is there's a link here, and you can click on this, which will bounce this off to Microsoft for a little bit of help about what this upgrade actually means. And we can go and find the code that's having the problems, and it gives a bit of a description around that just to try and help us get through. So we have some issues around auto numbers. We have some issues around primary keys and how they're looking. There's a whole chunk of different issues in there. We've got some challenges with relationships not being compatible. So in Access, where you go into, you create all the relationships and such like, things like those are not compatible. But the way that we get around that is by creating lookup fields and such like. So all these issues are pretty solvable. Cool. So this is my next part of the demo, rather than sort of labouring through and you guys watching me diligently delete things and delete relationships. I went through and solved a few problems. So in the first database, I had a few more tables because in the original application that we've got, we managed all our own security. So we had all our own users. We managed all their accesses to what they were doing in this application. And a chunk of the errors that I was getting in the database related to this user management side of things. So my solution to that was just to delete them. And it sounds foolhardy, but the reality is I do all my user management through SharePoint. So that's where all my users sit. I control their access through SharePoint because I give them access to the sites and the lists. So the reality is, why am I replicating code and functionality that exists in SharePoint? So I'm using the tool that I'm provided with rather than working around it. So now I've got this new database, and if we and I went through and resolved the primary key issues and resolved the relationship issues with lookups and such like. Crikey, yet still more issues. And so as we go through and start changing things, you whittle down messages, and they get more and more specific to what the challenges are. And remembering that, I guess the reason that Microsoft have done this is because of the environment that they're working with SharePoint. So they're turning everything to ASPX pages. They're turning everything to SharePoint workflows. They're turning everything to JavaScript. And although we see some challenges in the migration, the reality is you just need to go through and address those issues using a macro, typically using a macro, or going through and changing some of your table relationships, and then those issues will they'll disappear. So third time lucky. Let's hope that we're actually going to work third time lucky. So I've just gone through. I've done my compatibility checker. I've obviously resolved all my issues. Some by deleting some tables, others by going through and changing how the relationships work. Didn't want our look. So, so if I had some recent ones that I shipped up, that'd be down on the list down here. I guess what we're seeing here versus that option number one, or the first one I ran through. And the first one I ran through, I created my own site, and really I was just pushing up tables. What we're seeing in here is that all going to plan. Access is going to go through and look after everything for me, and it's going to go through and provision a site. It's going to go through and push up those tables. It's going to go through and change any macros I might have had into the workflow side of things. Once it gets to the end of this, it's also going to give me either a clean bill of health or a fail. And if it gives me a fail, it's going to give me some pointers on why I didn't do so well. So as it's going up, I guess the question is, does it start to make sense why we may start to use Access and Access services in the environment? A show of hands if it's yes. A show of hands if you're still as disgusted as you were when you walked into the room about Access services. Okay. So why are you still sort of disheartened by Access services?
You were asking the first question.
Okay. Yep. So it's starting to make sense.
Yeah, a quick way to convert it.
Yep. Have you seen any challenges with what we've seen so far? Just as that's loading up, oh, we've got success.
We'll just the usual tweaking it, so I will go up
Yep.
there.
And don't be afraid. Please, people sit in the front row, and I'll victimise some people back in the back row to encourage people to come forward in the future with different things as well. So basically, we've pushed up access to this Access application up to the server. It's created its own site. Take a demo. And as we can see, this is all sort of pulled up into Access, and that looks pretty enough. And you'd think that the job is over, but unfortunately no. So in effect, I've pushed up a very basic Access instance to SharePoint, and really we're only halfway there. So now really all I can do is I can open up, I can modify stuff, I can open it up Excel, I can go back to the Access database, but we're not really, we're a halfway house. We're sort of, really SharePoint is still acting as a store. We can see that there's kind of some different icons on the lists here. What we haven't done here is we haven't really created a true Access services database yet. If you're going to do these things from scratch, when you first open up Access, you'll get two options. One's a blank database, and one's a web blank web database. So it's important that you start with the web blank database if you're creating things from scratch. Otherwise, things just won't really go the way you want. What the web blank database does is it gets rid of any options that just won't work or non-compatible side of things, and it puts you in a place where you can start building Access services apps. So what we really need to do here is we need to create a blank web form, or a web form, which is this one here. We can see the little globe, and basically let's build a very basic application. Cool. So I created a button called Open Form, pretty self-explanatory. And basically that button, once I go to the event side of things, it brings me into the macro builder. And then you have all these actions basically that you can step through. And you can build up really complex macros. And sort of after the session, after you've downloaded the lab and you're sitting at home on the weekend and you're thinking I must build some Access services apps, there's actually there's a whole bunch of great content on the web. There's the Access team blog, and I've got regular sort of videos up there that will talk you through stuff. And there's a whole bunch of stuff at Channel 9 that will take you through stuff. And you can build up, you can drop error handling into your macros so that it'll deal with any obscure stuff. You can pretty much do anything that you want. So the only challenge that I've sort of had with the macros is sort of really thinking differently about what I was doing and how I was going to go about doing it. So as I sort of go on here to open up a form, the reality is I've got no web forms that I can actually open up, so it doesn't let me do any. So we'll just step back a bit, and what we'll do is we'll create a web form. So what I did there is, because I'm particularly keen to get things moving rather than showing me laying up a form, is I just basically clicked on a web table, and I basically clicked on a form, and it laid it out. And so obviously you can step through and lay out that form as much as you want, and do whatever you want with it. But for the purposes of what we're trying to do today, we'll just create that. So we can basically go through and set in conditions of what we want to do, how we want to do it. We can basically say add, edit, read only. And open it up as a dialog. So some pretty sort of basic stuff there that I'm going through and doing. So wicked. So in theory now we've got a web form denoted by a special little globe next to it. The other thing that I need to quickly do is basically set up what the startup options are inside of Access. So what we can see here are, So we've sort of got two different approaches. So if I was just starting the Access up in a client mode, then I can pick any one of my forms. If I'm starting it up in a web mode, I can only really pick the web enabled forms. Cool. So just quickly, so basically once you've connected Access to Access services, then really moving forward, it's really about syncing it rather than re-importing it. So now that I've synced it, if we come into this thing here, and maybe we do maybe we just close that down. So basically now we've opened up the site again, and in effect it's just going to render through, all going to plan, that main menu page with that one solitary button. And I'm going to go through and open up my form. All going to plan. So I guess just to recap what we've done there. So we've taken a SQL Server database, we've brought it into Access, we've gone through and grabbed that Access database, and we've created a couple of very basic forms, and we've pushed that stuff up to SharePoint and Access services, and then we've gone back, we've created that main menu form, we've created a web form, which is very important. So if you don't read the instructions, it takes a little bit of time to work that out when you wonder why things are not working. Then we've gone and set that as the startup form, and basically now we've gone and opened up a form here, which basically shows us in effect what we can do. So in a very basic sense, we've now got a web application up and going in a period of 20 minutes, but let's be honest, I was waffling a bit more than what you probably would do if you're sitting at the computer doing it yourself. And to be fair, we'll probably go through and tidy some of those things up. So I think we can start to see that we can pretty quickly start to get applications up and going. Now, I guess the next question is, well, so in theory, you talked about coming along to see a reporting presentation. So Let's just see if I can remember how to do the steps that I was trying to get myself to do the other day. So in our asset register, we have a whole bunch of OSs, and we have OSs assigned to the asset register. We really only have about 2 apples, to be fair. It's Microsoft Conference. Do you want to talk about that? Move away. Okay. So what I'm going to try and do here, all going to plan, and me remembering the steps that I was meant to do. Full view. There we go. Ideally, what I'm going to do is, in effect, try and get a report to run off a drop-down combo. It's really basic stuff, just to prove that everything actually does in fact work. Not quite. Names would be more helpful than numbers. 6. That'll be the apple. So now, in effect, we've got a basic drop-down. We can see my design skills really coming to play here. With the way that we actually lay out forms, it's basically using tables to lay these out. Formatting. So once again, using the miraculous wizard. So in effect, what we basically what we're doing there is going through and laying up a very basic form. We're going through and creating a drop-down based on a list. We're going through and creating a report button. The next thing we want to do is basically just go through and do once again what I did before. Open up the report. Open up the macro. And I just need to save a form. Save a report. It's early. Typing, it's a bit early for typing. The big report, once again picking up those sorts of things, once again. Come on, parameters. And the other thing I want to do with this report is basically apply a parameter to it, so that I just really want it to open up and show me just just the items that relate to a certain OS. But because I planned ahead, because that button doesn't want to work for me at the moment. So this is where I've put quite a bit of styling work into this this report here. And so basically, what when we go and click on this, I've already got a macro created. And so basically, I'm opening up a list called a report called R300 OS list, and then I've got a parameter down here that I've basically created, which basically says OS type, and then I'm actually referring to that checkbox on the report. And here goes a previous one that I've built up before. So I can just basically go into here and create that, click that, and click run. So what I'm trying to show you here is that so you can, so from a reporting point of view, once you've got everything up and going into SharePoint and Access services, that you can start to build up reports really quickly. And when this is finished loading, we'll see quite a nice reporting experience. And the reports can be exported to our traditional sort of output types as well. So we can push them through to Word, push them through to Excel, push them through to CSV, and such like. And also we can create reporting workbenches. So you could quite simply create a reporting workbench that basically you click in, and you've got a whole bunch of properties that you can set up, and people can go through and check it. So that building up that basic list box was just looking at, in effect, a list inside SharePoint, and then just putting some parameters onto it so that when the report opens, it's going to go back and have a look at that list box. So I think that pretty much most people inside an organisation that have a familiarity with SharePoint, with Access rather, could certainly go through and start building out reports. And obviously we don't have any ultimate instances inside Provoke. It's Vista? No, Windows 7. Surely we've got some, must have some servers. So the reason that was a bit slow in sort of loading up, and unless I deleted all my data. The reason it was a bit slow loading up is it was kind of the first time that it was going through, this will be funny, going through and pulling out the, firing up the report. Oh, look at that, one piece of data. And so then basically we can go through and save it to those standard formats that we've seen before. And it'll come out as to be expected. So I think when we think about, I think the reporting side of things is one of the, building out reports on Access is kind of one of the last hanging fruits, because we can go through and do it pretty quickly. But part of the journey is actually getting it into SharePoint in the first instance. And I think what you're going to find when you start playing with Access services, that it's going to be really quick to get things up and going really quickly, and you're going to love that. Then I think the next part of the journey for you is just getting your head around the macro builder and how you go about using that. It's really cool how it'll do TeleSense based to filter down the macros. One of the other really cool things on it is that we can do. So it'll start to do TeleSense about what you're gonna build out as well, to give you a hand to start to referring to things on the form as well. So there's heaps of nifty little tools in there that we can use to get things up and going. So the goal of what I was trying to show you is that it's pretty easy to get things up and going into a place where you can distribute amongst the whole organisation, and you can use your own creative license to get things looking how you want them to look. Also in here, I can also still go and open up that Access database in the client mode, and I can leverage some of the resources that aren't published up to the web. So we can still have a rich experience in the client as well. So in effect, you get the best of both worlds. So just quickly looking at the two options that we've seen. So option number one was really just about using SharePoint as a hoster of Access databases, in my mind. And from this list that we can see that we can data in SharePoint and essentially deploy an interface. So I guess that's sort of baby steps for me. And so you can do that into 2007, 2010 and SharePoint Online. SharePoint plus Access Services really is the second demo that I showed you, which kind of gives you that full ability to start using Access as a prototyping tool. Starts using Access to deliver sort of business value very quickly and leveraging the skills that your organisation's already got in Access. You do need the eCal for Access Services. So really, it's very similar to the first one. We're still storing stuff in Access lists. We can still put up the client objects, but also now we have these web objects inside Access. So that sort of comes to an end of sort of really what I wanted to take you through today. These are some other sessions that are on today that I think will be great sessions to head along to. Pretty much you don't need to leave this room, very central. So I'd encourage everybody to get along to those presentations. So with that said, any questions? Because we've got a bit of time, yeah?
If an organisation has made a huge investment in VBA,
Yep.
is there going to be lots of issues there?
So VBA doesn't go up. It's as simple as that. That's well, it doesn't go up in the Access Services world. The reason I sort of showed option number one was really to say, hey, if you do have an investment in VBA, then probably option number one would really be your on-ramping to get some of the benefits of SharePoint. The reality is it's a matter of just going through and triaging the applications, running the compatibility list, and then having a look at what you're doing in VBA and saying, well, how would I get that to work in the macro world? And the reality is you can do a lot of that in the macro world, but you would need to go through and recode those sorts of things. So it's not just a straight clicky-click, we're live. No third-party apps that I've come across, but what I do know is that there are certainly a bunch of organisations out of the US that are putting a lot of time in this, and there's one organisation that pretty much commits to migrating your applications to Access Services. So, Steve, have you seen any third parties? Not yet, but to be honest, with the opportunity that exists in Access, then we've got to think that there's going to be some third-party apps that are going to turn up at the end of the day. Yeah. So what with SharePoint Online today is it's about that option number one where you're pushing up the lists. It's not about Access Services in SharePoint Online today because SharePoint Online today. So if you're Access hosting, that's a good question. I would probably have to defer to. Yeah. So for me, I've been sort of really talking about the on-premise side of things and the online services about. Yeah. So that was about option number one, where we basically push up the lists. And in that situation, you don't need an eCal, you just need an Access client if you're just pushing up the lists. But that's not going to give you the Access Services world, which is those web forms, and converting to macros. So that's really storing your data in lists and then uploading the client into a document library. Yep. So with the web forms, then that needs to be an eCal. And for me, when I'm thinking about online services, I'll be waiting for Wave 14 on online services, which is sort of early next year, and then that will give you the answers to that question then, because they haven't actually got Access Services in the Microsoft Online world today. So that's SharePoint 2010 today, which is on premise. Wave 14 for online services for Microsoft, I believe, is sort of coming out early next year. So that's when they upgrade all their hosted infrastructure to SharePoint 2010 and the 14 wave. Any other questions there? Yeah. So option number one, where we're just pushing up the list, that's really, you can run that in SharePoint 2007 or 2010. To do option number two, which is those web forms, that's SharePoint 2010 Enterprise Edition. Any other queries? Jarrett?
You didn't show upgrading reports.
So it's pretty much, if it doesn't upgrade, it's going to tell you it doesn't upgrade. What I had in the scenario that I had is I had a couple of reports because they are non-web reports and they didn't upgrade. So fundamentally, if you want to get reports going, then you probably need to look at starting with the web report. But from what I've sort of seen with playing around with the reports, it is very similar to the client-based sort of things. You just need to do some jiggery poker around parameters and such like and those sorts of things. But I think reporting is kind of probably one of the best strengths of what we're seeing, the way to actually get data out into a really nice structured form and very presentable, pushes out to PDF and Word and those sorts of things. Any other questions? Oh, there we go, yeah. So I've actually sort of talked to too many customers about switching over. Sort of really a chunk of my stuff is me thinking about how I'd use it and go through bits and pieces, and talking to Steve as well. Like I think with any change, you're going to have some form of resistance at the end of the day. But I guess if we can give people tools that they can work out how to use, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, the things that I'm doing are supported, and all of a sudden I don't have to deal with the backup nightmare and the data corruption nightmare and those sorts of things. It's all about positioning it with the guy that's been doing it for 10 years. I was watching a great webcast a couple of weeks ago, and it's this dude that he actually does work for Microsoft. He's an external. He's been doing Access for like 20 years or something like that. And he was doing a whole bunch of prezos on Access services. And he sort of loved the fact that distribution approach, where basically someone just comes into SharePoint, streams it down. So if anything, he was looking at it as an enabler, rather than, hey, man, someone's taking my tools off me. And the other side of things, you're just controlling their rights about how they're publishing up to SharePoint as well. So I guess at the end of the day, it's change management more than anything. But hey, if I was an Access guy, I'd sort of like it that my stuff distributes more.
So it supports offline?
Yeah, you can take it offline. And in effect, so if two people take it offline, obviously, then we end up into the conflict resolution stuff that ships with the tool and those sorts of things. So it's a good offline tool, yeah. Cool, well, we're probably running out of time. Hey, I'd like to thank everybody for coming along, learning a little bit about Access today, and I'd encourage everybody to have a play with it in the future. Cheers.